Imagine an AI denying a critical business loan, or maybe assisting in a really complex medical diagnosis. And it gives you this clean, perfectly logical summary of exactly why it made that decision. We rely heavily on those summaries, right? But what if that explanation is a complete mirage? Welcome to this explainer on an absolutely fascinating May 2026 paper by Yoav Gur-Arya, Anna Marasovic, and Mor Geva. Let's just dive right into this because what this research team uncovers is nothing short of a massive illusion in how we measure AI transparency. We're relying on these models more and more every single day for highly complex tasks, but this paper, it exposes a critical, structural flaw in how we evaluate the very core of that reasoning. So it all boils down to this. Can we actually trust AI reasoning? I mean, it's basically the fundamental question of modern computing at this point. When a large language model solves a problem and gives us this beautifully formatted step-by-step breakdown of how it got to its conclusion, is that actually the real computation happening behind the scenes in its neural network? Or is the AI just kind of telling us what we want to hear, like generating this polite, convincing fiction that masks its true internal process?
To really get to the bottom of this, we need to understand a core concept first, chain of thought, or CoT for short. In the field, this refers to the traces or the steps an AI generates so we can interpret its intermediate reasoning states or, audit its behaviors. Think of it like asking a student to show their work on an advanced calculus exam. We don't just want the final number, we want to follow their mathematical logic step by step to verify exactly how they got there, just to make sure they didn't just guess or blindly memorize the answer.
Okay, moving to section 1, the missing ground truth. Let's talk about unobservable logic. Because look, just like a clever student might completely fake those calculus steps just to seamlessly match a final answer they copied from a friend, how do we actually know the AI's step-by-step explanation is genuine? The scary truth is, the internal computations of large language models are not directly observable. We're caught in this massive measurement trap. We're dealing with these black boxes with hundreds of billions of parameters where the internal weights and activations just don't map perfectly to human-readable logic. And because we literally cannot look inside the AI's neural network to verify its true path, we lack what scientists call ground truth labels. Without an objective ground truth, verifying if the AI's logic matches its text has essentially been one giant educated guessing game.
And this brings us to a super crucial distinction here: plausibility versus faithfulness. Since the field hasn't really been able to measure true, underlying faithfulness, older evaluation benchmarks mistakenly relied on proxies, like plausibility or importance. But here's the catch. Plausibility just means the AI's explanation sounds believable to a human evaluator. It could still be a total, highly articulate lie. True faithfulness means the generated explanation perfectly, mathematically represents the real, underlying computation the model actually performed. Relying on plausibility is a really dangerous proxy because it misleads us into thinking we can trust a chain of thought just because it reads well, even when it's fundamentally deceptive.
Which brings us to section 2. Enter the BonaFide benchmark. Here's how they solved the unknown. So the researchers came up with this incredibly clever workaround to finally measure the unmeasurable. They broke it down into a rigorous 3-step pipeline. First, they constructed very specific, controlled tasks. Second, they ensured the final outputs of these tasks absolutely must reveal the intermediate computations. They call this a force reveal mechanism. Imagine giving the AI a complex math puzzle where arriving at the final exact number physically requires calculating a specific intermediate value first. There's literally no way around it. They forced the AI into a corner where its final answer acts as absolute proof of its intermediate steps. And third, by structuring the tasks this way, they created an automated labeling pipeline. This pipeline gives us undeniable ground truth faithfulness labels, both at the granular individual step level and for the entire chain of thought.
And guys, the sheer scale of what they built with this method is staggering. We are talking about 3,066 labeled chains of thought, tested across 13 different complex reasoning tasks, evaluating 10 different state-of-the-art models, spanning both proprietary and open-weight architectures. I mean, this isn't some small, isolated test on a single model variant. This massive scale completely establishes the absolute authority of their meta-evaluation. By testing across such a huge landscape, they essentially built the ultimate undeniable proving ground for AI auditing tools.
All right, section 3, the shocking results. This is where the metrics fail.
So what actually happens when the current faithfulness metrics, the ones we've been heavily relying on, are finally put to a real test against an undeniable ground truth? Well, it's an absolute bloodbath for our current auditing tools. The paper drops this total bombshell. Most metrics perform near chance, exhibit strong prediction biases, and degrade on longer CoTs. Take a second and really digest that. The very tools we've trusted to audit AI,
the rigorous metrics we use to verify if an artificial intelligence is safe and aligned with its actual processing. They are basically just guessing.
To put the gravity of these failures into perspective, we need to look at the AURO scores. Just as a quick refresher, AURO is a standard statistical measurement for accuracy, where a 1.0 is absolute perfection and a 0.50 is the equivalent of tossing a coin. The absolute best metric currently available for evaluating faithfulness at the overall chain of thought level, it achieves a score of just 0.70. That is a truly dismal score, especially when you consider we are dealing with advanced computing systems that absolutely require rigorous, fail-proof auditing to be deployed safely.
But wait, it gets worse. When you zoom into the granular, individual step level, it drops drastically. The best metric available for evaluating specific logical steps plummets to a 0.59. A 0.59. You honestly might as well be flipping a quarter to decide if an AI's explanation of a specific logical step is truthful or just a hallucination. Frankly, flipping a coin would probably save thousands of dollars in server costs compared to running these broken metrics.
And the metric failures don't even stop at just being stunningly inaccurate. The researchers found that the performance absolutely does not transfer across different settings. So a metric that performs poorly, but maybe somewhat predictably on one reasoning task, might just completely break down and output total garbage on a slightly different task. And on top of all that unreliability, running these complex, useless evaluation metrics comes at a prohibitively high computational cost. We are literally burning massive amounts of server hardware, electricity, and engineering capital to generate evaluation results that we can't even trust.
Finally, Section 4, Why This Matters. Let's talk about the real-world impact. The inescapable conclusion here is that this paper exposes fundamental, structural gaps in current faithfulness evaluation. And this isn't just some academic curiosity, right? As large language models are rapidly integrated into much higher stakes environments, again, imagine an AI diagnosing a rare disease or analyzing legal contracts for critical loopholes. We absolutely cannot rely on broken, superficial metrics to audit them. If an AI hallucinates its chain of thought while diagnosing a patient, sounding perfectly plausible but being entirely unfaithful to any real medical logic, the consequences are severe. There is a desperate, immediate call to action here to develop fundamentally more reliable, computationally efficient, and strictly ground truth-based evaluation tools.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. If our tools for auditing AI are broken, who is watching the watchman? We've been operating under this incredibly dangerous illusion of AI transparency, falsely comforted by models that sound logical, even when we cannot mathematically prove how they actually got there. This paper proves without a doubt that we urgently need to fix how we measure trust before we surrender too much control to systems we can't reliably verify. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions, and I hope this helps you better understand the true frontier of AI safety.